How about myself? Anybody?
Yeah, you're good, AJ.
Okay, I'll call the Public Works Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Cindy,
Here.
Beth,
Here.
Todd,
Here.
Andrew,
Here.
and Crystal.
Here. First period for public comment. Nobody's here. Anybody online that's public that would like to speak? Go ahead.
Looks like you're good,
Okie
Cindy.
dokie. Okay. Approval of committee minutes from March 18th, 2025.
So Todd, I'll approve the minutes.
This Crystal, I'll second.
Motion by Todd, second by Crystal to approve the minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Minutes approved. Review and approval of bids for annual general asphalt. Sarah.
Okay, so I'm going to share a PowerPoint, which seems really over the top, but I figured I had so many images and all of this fits together. So all of the asphalt, the next three items, are all a part of bids, and I have to look at what our budget is in order to ensure that we have enough money to go around, right? So I'm going to just talk about them overall. And so, oh,
Yep, you just need to share it. Go ahead.
did I not share?
Nope, you do.
Oh.
You just need to go into
Do my
slideshow.
thing.
Yep. You always got to give me a second to move it over.
Sure. Got it. Just wanted to make sure I was on the right track. Okay, so I figured I'd start here because this is more or less the status of our roads in the city. This is our Paiser ratings that we have, and this is from 2023. So I will say that, I mean, this would not necessarily be accurate up to today. Typically it gets worse, not better. However, this is where we're at more or less. This gives you a good general idea of where things are. So red would be the Paiser rating winner, which is the worst condition. Yellow would be the second, blue, black, and then green are the better roads. So I just wanted to show you this because all of what comes next is a deviation of trying to figure out like how to address the worst case roads that we have in the city. So go ahead.
What's pink?
Pink is roads that are in the city that are not the cities. And I actually, it's interesting because I saw Landfill Road. That's the first time I've ever noticed that there. I'm not actually sure what that is because Brendel Lane is north of there. So it's not Brendel Lane. It's not even, it's like where Family Restaurant is. So maybe there's some sort of legacy road that's still in the system because it's not, we're not getting state aid for it, right? So it's pink, it means we're not getting any aid to take care of it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's come through there years ago with the garbage truck.
Ah,
That's probably why it's there.
sure. Yeah, because it existed. So yeah, so here's just gives you the more or less idea of where we're at. I put, I just, again, this might seem fancy, but it was pretty rudimentary for today. I just wanted to give you guys information concisely. This is County NN, which we redid. So it was red, but now it's taken care of. Okay, so this green area is Center Avenue, which we'll talk about later today. I'm not going to worry about that because that's going to be fully reconstructed. These orange areas are on the capital improvement plan tentatively. So we can talk more about those later, but I am not also going to worry about that for the purposes of today because they're capital improvements. They're not sort of within our operating, what I'm working on today. Okay, so this is what we're thinking of doing. The blue is the projects that we are thinking of doing with our operational maintenance funds this year. So I'll go in detail, but I'm just trying to give you an idea. But if you can look, we at least got rid of all the reds, which is the really, really bad roads. And we're starting to work on the yellow roads. I will say, in an ideal world, I should not be using the money for the blue on reds. But unfortunately, we either leave them or do them, but giving what I can see from the capital improvement plan means that they're at least 6 years out, if not more. And so some of these roads are just not going to make it 6 years. Okay, so This one was not in my original list, but the guys came to me and said, it is so bad down here. So this is the end of Maple Street. Cindy has no idea about this yet. So surprise, Cindy. This is near Cindy. Well, this is Cindy's property, surrounds the area, and then other rates. So the end of Maple. The end of it's really bad. And then the section, I guess, more on the east side is better. And so we were looking at doing some work on a double seal. So it's like pretty much kind of like a gravel road with seal coating would be what we would do there. We'd fix up where is necessary. But we do a wider section than we typically would a road. It's all within the road right of way, but there's just, everybody turns around there. The utilities people turn around there because there's a hydrant on the end of the road. Our guys turn around there because it's a dead end. Yeah, I know. And we maybe should put, I don't know, some sort of thing, because they're using your driveway a lot, aren't they? Sorry, did you see Bea? There you go. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Well, this area isn't as bad. Where is my cursor? This area is not as bad, and it's I would go for the width of the road, essentially. So there'd be like an area that's a little bigger that we'd seal coat, and then an area that we just do a single seal on. But I think it will take care of a lot of the stuff that we're having troubles with down there. That was an additive bid item. We got a price for it, but we didn't necessarily say we were doing it as a base bid. Again, it was brought to me by the staff. The other one is Prairie Windway. Oh, this image got changed somehow. I thought I cropped it, but in any case, this is what we had applied for under LRIP a number of years ago. And we went through all these different scenarios under LRIP. We ended up getting $17,000 from it, but we have to pave it. And we've gone around in circles and said, like, this needs some serious work, but it probably just needs a seal coat. We'll build up the road. We were going to do it last year, but we ran out of time, and it was kind of a big project, and Wade had just sort of taken over, and it was a lot. So this year I think we'll go for it, but we're going to use a seal coat, a double seal, widen the road a bit. And what I would do with that LRIP money is actually transfer it to another project, which I'll talk about shortly. I know this is one that is a city road. It's always kind of confusing because it seems like it's a private driveway. But now that all the soccer fields are back there, it's just getting beat up like pretty bad. I've been driving by it more regularly lately, and I mean, it's kind of shameful. All my slides are small. Okay, I don't know why it did that, but in any case, let's see. Can I zoom in a little bit? Yeah. Okay. So this one's Washington. Washington has been on the capital improvement list for like 10 years. And it really needs to be done. And this time it's not even met the list of what's proposed. It's just keeps getting pushed off. It needs a new road surface predominantly. And that's part of why it keeps getting pushed off, is because it's just a really heavy resource on the general fund side. The sewer underneath it does need to be replaced. Some parts could be lined, but the water main's fine. And so it's kind of a weird project that keeps getting pushed off. Once upon a time, we thought about doing it as a resurfacing project, but the more I look at it, there's drainage problems, there's bad sidewalk, bad curb. It's too much for us to try to just like resurface, in my opinion. But it is really bad. Like, it's crumbling in a lot of places, especially the south half. So against my better judgment, in the sense of like, I wouldn't normally try to go after these kinds of things with a seal coat, but I think that it needs to be done. I really don't think we can just say we're going to wait 6 to 7 years before we get in here without doing anything to it. It's kind of like in front of the post office. Like, it gets so bad that it's like, we can't just patch it or just leave it and not do something, even though that might not be like a 10-year fix, right? So I still think we should do it. So the Decker to Parkinson, between Parkinson and Church, was a part of the Northwest project 10 years ago, I think. And then that section to Broadway. The section from Church to Broadway is definitely better than the section from Parkinson to Decker, but I think I think it will get us through for a while. And all of these are chip seal projects, which is typically, I've been really liking that microsurfacing, but it's not the right fit. This is a chip seal can bleed and has some issues that way, but it also like heals itself under the heat. So whereas that microsurfacing is kind of like a more solid, it's kind of once you're done and you get what you get. And if it cracks, it's cracked. Whereas the chip seal, as it like shows what's underneath and like the refraction, it kind of will disappear a little bit in the summertime each season. So those are the Washington projects. And then Minchell is particularly bad at the very far end, right on Independence. And so this one sort of hummed and hawed, but we're not, even though it's a water and sewer need, it's a water and sewer need like probably 20 years from now. We're not going to get there yet. There's other projects that are way far ahead of it. So a double seal there. And then we've been talking about resurfacing. I actually was looking at doing Independence. So we did Independence from this point all the way to Hillier a number of years ago. Worked pretty well. I was thinking of doing this, but then as I looked at it, like this is a really steep area. And again, we have a newer crew, right? Like the newer grader operator. I feel like let's do something that's in need, but pretty straightforward. And so that's why I'm looking here at Chicago Avenue, and this would be a repaving. There's certainly sections that need curb repair, which I think we could also do in-house. And I think it's a nice little project that like can get our feet wet in getting used to doing that before we take on something that's going to cause us a few more complications with how steep it is. Okay, so all this said, because I want to get to why I'm accepting certain bids. Okay, so here are our asphalt bids for 2025. We always do a general asphalt bid, and then we do a project, which is another agenda item. So we're going to focus on that like top chart for first time. So the green column is what we paid last year for the same bid item, if we even used it. So that's one of the things about this is we don't often use all of what's on here. It's like kind of our way of setting prices at the beginning of the year and then knowing what we're getting into later on. A lot of this ends up being utility stuff because we're doing patches. So Matthew submitted their bid, a full complete bid. Klashik submitted their bid late. So I talked to George about this because we need to make a decision about whether we would accept a late bid. It is legal to accept a late bid. The city has legal rights to accept that bid. However, maybe not the greatest way of going about things. We don't want people just coming in at any time. And we also need to make sure that if a late bid comes in, that there's no, as George quoted, funny business, right? Like we didn't open the bids and then tell Klashik what the bids were, and then they bid lower. Like that can't happen. So it's like you can't negotiate with other people later, but we can actually look at their bid because there was no disclosure about what the bids were for Matthew by the time I got the other bid. So it was due on Friday. I opened it late on Monday, and then Klashik's bid came in shortly thereafter. And so the other thing I would say that made me feel like it was he just clearly forgot was that he submitted. So Matthew does like huge DOT projects, right? Like they're very professional. They know this process really well. And sometimes that ends up us having costs that are higher than normal for smaller things like patching. And once upon a time, we worked with Sheldon all the time, almost all the time. Sheldon got the small patches and Matthew got the bigger stuff. And that was just kind of what made sense. So now there's no Sheldon, but Klashik is kind of like that. I get like a standard invoice, like carbon copy as the bid. And this year they whited out the bid date of 2024 from last year and put 2025. So it's literally the same bid that they bid last year. So, I mean, again, he's just putting it in. But it is something to think about what we want to do. I mean, Greg and I went through this today again, because a lot of the patching ends up being on the utility side. Matthew's bid does include shaping. So essentially, like, we would cut the concrete, saw cut it, the asphalt rather, and we would leave it as is. They'd come and tear everything out and grade it and then pave it. Now, that's not how I put it in the bid, but it is something to know when you're looking between the two numbers, because it's not necessarily truly apples to apples. And we've gone back and forth over time about what we prefer. We have actually asked for bids with shaping before, but it adds cost, right? And it is something that we can do. And so we typically have left it out because it's not something that has to happen. It is nice to have them do it, but I would say that I don't think it should fully sway our choices. The other thing to consider is that the small areas, so that like under 400 square feet, is like most of the patchwork that we do. So, and I say that because those bid numbers are closer than in gap than compared to some of the bigger ones. So the other thing is Klaishik was the first time we used them was last year. They did a fine job, but they also, we had got them in touch with a number of other folks in town that are private, like Bethel Home. They were doing the work outside of North Point, so CNC. And we typically kind of say, hey, the pavers in town to do patches, and everybody kind of jumps on board and gets them to do work. Well, Klaishik did not connect with anybody, or they did connect with some people, and then they just showed up and left town. They did our work. They did exactly what they needed to do, but it ended up kind of leaving a few people hanging. So CNC kind of scrambled. Bethel Home never ended up doing their patch at all. So like, and Matthew always does a good job of like being that company that like will connect with everybody and get their job done and leave. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I was first see if there was any strong opinions in the room, and I can certainly give a recommendation, but they're pretty close. Like if there's a preference from the group, I think that would sway me one way or another. If anybody has any input.
I was just curious why they didn't clay pick.
Yeah, they never bid that, and
Oh, okay.
that's what we see with the smaller groups. I think Sheldon sometimes did the alleys, put a number in, but often never did. Like they're just a smaller outfit.
You know, with Matthew, when I was still there, if we tore out a patch, right? I will say, Sheldon's doing a nice job, but if we were low, some places the blacktops, we tore it out, and we had to bring gravel back and add. But Matthew now, they would always just have their own gravel. They would just patch it in the way it had to be. No question, they wouldn't come looking for us.
Right.
Matthew's Repro Company. I would say Matthew, but I'm kind of know a lot of the guys still there, so
Yeah,
but they do good work.
they do good work. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Anybody else?
AJ or Seth, do you have a comment or question?
I mean, I guess we want to look at if people miss a deadline.
Yeah.
I mean, they miss the deadline. I mean, it's unfair to Matthew if we go with a lower bid that missed the cut when they had their stuff in on time. Just kind of way I feel.
I would kind of concur with AJ. Definitely, if we have the history with Matthew and they've met all of what we've requested of them, I'd lean that way too.
Great. That makes it easy. I think that's a great recommendation.
You don't need a motion or anything. from
So
it.
we would need to accept Matthew's bid for all of the bid items in the hot mix asphalt general bid.
Would like to make that? You're on a roll, Todd. Oh, okay.
Okay, this is Crystal, and I would move approval of the bids for the annual general asphalt as described in the spreadsheet today to Matthew. Do I need to give it a dollar amount?
This is going to be for the hot mix paving
Right,
and patching.
right.
I think you can just do it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Todd, I'll second it.
Motion by Crystal, second by Todd. You got what you need there, Lori?
Hold on just a second.
I will
Okay.
say, just as a note, Matthew's prices went down from last year. Like you can see, so that's a good trend. That has
very-
not happened since I've been here. So
I'm
we
very
like that.
surprised. Okay, roll call vote.
Seth,
I,
Todd,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
and Cindy.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Review and approval of bids for asphalt resurfacing project Chicago Avenue.
Okay, so theoretically, we wouldn't even need to bid out the this, well, I shouldn't say that. In this case, we do. Normally, we wouldn't have to because we already accepted a bid that they could work under, but generally they give us a better number when we have a singled out item. But in this case, we had to because what I'm going to do is I'm going to request the DOT switch the project from Prairie Wind to Chicago Avenue. And so if being that the case, I need it to say this was an LRIP project, which is what I put on the bid. So, yeah, Bathy was the only one that submitted, which is not a surprise. And I think it's a good number. I actually budgeted $4,000 more than that. So
Someone want to make a motion for the wedging of street? Is that what we're talking about, the hot mix?
yeah, it would be
Wedging of
the
street.
hot mix asphalt for Chicago Avenue.
Okay, this is Crystal, and I would recommend that we approve the bid for asphalt resurfacing for Chicago Avenue, and this is hot mix asphalt. And do I need to say that goes to Matthew?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's Todd will second it.
Okay, motion by Crystal, second by Todd.
Can we add the $34,030 in that one since it is LRIP? Crystal, is
Yep.
that okay?
Yeah.
Todd? Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Roll call.
Todd,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
and Seth.
I,
Okay, great. This is very helpful, your PowerPoint, how you
Well,
did
good.
this. Yeah,
It took
we're-
me a little bit, but I had so many images that I was like, this is to pull each file up.
That's
would
nice,
Be a
yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah. Okay, we're on review and approval of bids for annual seal coat chip seal.
Okay, so these were the projects that I highlighted when we looked at the map. Those were all the blue ones except for Chicago Avenue, which we just talked about. That was going to be a resurfacing project. So these are all the seal coat bids. So we had two bidders, Scott and Farner. Farner gave us two options, quartz, which is the same as what Scott bid, and then Farner had a special type of quartz that they had also put in a bid. So those are why we have three. And then I ended up switching, I made an addendum to this bid, which they both received and acknowledged, but Farner did not adjust the quantities for the base bid. And so I used, in the bid, they gave a square yard. So I did a corrected number because I just wanted to make sure that we were still looking at the low bid regardless of that error that they had. And they, like I said, they gave us a square yard and put on the square footage. So it was very clear that there was that error. But even with that error, they still weren't the lowest bidder. And when I look at the price, so what it is the base bid and 4 of the additive bid items. The only reason there isn't the 5th is that it was the same spot. I just wanted to know the difference in price between a single seal and a double seal. And with all of that together and selecting the double seal for Prairie Wind Way, which is it will give us a better product, especially since we're redoing the road. Like we're going to be putting base material down. The total of all the seal coats that we would select is $31,750, which is within our budget. It's actually lower. Saving the surplus to use for rock material on Prairie and potentially Chicago Avenue, depending on what it looks like when we tear it up. It's really like we've done it both ways. We've torn things up that I thought, like, for example, County and I was totally sold that we were going to dig that whole thing out, and we didn't have to. Matthew is insanely picky about things, and they were fine with it. So, so you never know. The things you think might take more rock don't. So in any case, all this falls within the allotted budget that we have under our street maintenance items. So we're looking for accepting Scott's bid, and it would be all of the bid items, the base bid plus the additive bid items with Prairie Windway being double sealed.
Sarah, I had a question. I'm
Mhm.
not familiar with Scott. Have we worked with them before?
Mhm. Yeah, they actually did it last year.
Oh, they did. Whoops.
They are around a lot. Farner and Scott pretty much always bid. For a while there, Scott actually wasn't coming around very much, but they have again, and they were our low bid last year too. They're very close. They're always kind of neck and neck with each other. They are the guys with the red blazers. They always, like, at the trade shows, they always wear their red jackets.
Okay, anybody have any questions? We're looking for a bid or a motion. We
Mhm.
got enough bids.
Right.
This is AJ. I'll make a motion that we go with Scott for our chip seal bids to the total of $31,750.
You need to add about the Prairie Windway double.
Oh, sorry, and Prairie Wind Way double seal.
This is Crystal. I'll second.
Any further discussion, questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Andrew,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye,
Seth,
I,
and Todd.
Aye.
great, motion carries. Review and approval of bids for sewer lining. We're just taking care of everything today.
Right? I think just keep on going. So these images aren't that great, but they looked better on the PDF when I had sent them out. So the two areas that we're talking about is Beckedall or Peterson Court, which was the base bid. This was, essentially, there's two sections to it. So there's a manhole in the middle of that red area. And then the alternate or additive bid item was Beckedall Court, which is a single section of sewer. So all the bids this year actually kind of surprised me. So last year, if you remember, we have traditionally used steam cured, but we actually used water cure last year. We picked that and it ended up being a fair amount more. I would say between $10,000 and $15,000 more. But we decided that we have, even though some people are surprised we even ever had odor issues, we've had it happen twice. And it's just because of the conditions that we're working with in the area, right? So one was like the sewer setup was not set up correctly. The other one was Tanya Berkey's house, right? And it was like a dried vent, I'm pretty sure that, or no, excuse me, it was the other way around. She was on the upstream side of it. And so everybody got notified to pour water down their drains, but she was outside of that area. And so it ended up just drifting her way. And so that's why we were looking at doing it a different way. But if you look, I should have highlighted this differently. Where's my cursor? There it is. Your cursor keeps tricking me. I think it's yours. This 35,000 is the total with the base and additive bid for steam cured, but this total 39,766 is the water cured. I mean, it's like $4,000 more. I am not exactly sure why they're so close because the steam cured didn't seem high to me based on what I estimated, because we usually have a budget of $50,000. And I intentionally made it less, but I actually made it as an additive bid item for Beckedall Court because I was worried that we would be getting close and we wouldn't be able to fit both of them in. But we're well under budget and you being able to use water cured. So I am thinking it went pretty smoothly last year. Let's give it a whirl again. So that would be my recommendation, to do those sections. So it's two sections of Peterson Court and then Beckedall Court as well. And that this is Vigie Sewer. Unfortunately, they are the only bidder. We had them as a single bidder last year. 2 and 3 years ago, we had a few others bidding and they were always so much higher than them. So they are certainly not out of the realm of what's a appropriate cost.
Okay. Looking for a motion or questions?
Well, this is Crystal, and I would approve the bid for sewer lining for Beckedall and Peterson Court in the amount of $39,706, and that's with Visa Service Sewer, Business
Yeah,
Sewer.
It's a hard one. 766.
Thank you.
Todd, I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Crystal, second by Todd. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Seth,
I,
Todd,
Aye.
and Andrew.
Great, motion carries. Hey, we're on to Main Street project update.
Sorry, I forgot I had turned it off. All right, well, we're back in action. Concrete. We're doing a lot of concrete pouring today. I was a little worried when they didn't show up yesterday. It was cold and they felt like their curing time would be long because there's an ambient air temperature that they have to hit. Nonetheless, they were here today and they've been moving pretty quickly. I mean, they've got all that curb, setting that curb is like the hardest part, more or less. Like it's like where you're basing everything off of and you're hitting all the grades and everything kind of just like follows suit after you set all that curb. So they've been working pretty consistently. Pellinger has been working on the South Street intersection traffic signal. That has gotten a little complicated, but we're moving forward. We ended up, so we ended the season with just about getting ready to put the conduit through to the other side, thinking that was like pretty straightforward because it's the power pole that it needs to come off of is near the cheese corner and it had to cross the street. And then they ended up not doing it because of weather, which actually was probably a good thing because what ended up happening is when they did do the excavation, they ran into a private storm sewer lateral from the hospital, which runs all the way along the boulevard. So we had to figure out what we could do differently and what made the most economic sense. So our current approach, at least in the works, is to just move the connection from the back of the inlet to the side of the inlet and just basically like deviate a little bit so that we can still put everything where we intended. So that was a bit of a surprise. I literally said to Jeff, call me if anything interesting happens. And like an hour later he called. I'm like, oh no, what's interesting? But I don't think it's still manageable. The only concern that I have is that we can't pour the concrete curb back there until the inlet gets put in because we need to, what we have been finding is a lot of, well, almost everything in the original design never altered the storm inlets underground. And they've just been in pretty bad shape. So we pretty much consistently replaced the castings when we've come up to them. So we've just been purchasing them and giving them to them to use because it wasn't something that was in the bid, but it was, they are willing to do it. And it's like, just pour it in. But this inlet was in pretty bad shape. And because there's typical not great design. So the stormwater pipe coming out is 12 inches, but the stormwater pipe coming in that the private lateral was 15. And it was in the back of like an inlet. So if we took that out and poured it on the side, we'd have just so much piecemealing that it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we're trying to do is get a new inlet box and then just like start from the beginning. And they worked with us. So if we provide the casting, they'll do all that extra work without charging us additionally, because there is an item for a new inlet, because there are new inlets on the project. Some of the time, like sometimes the curb actually moved and therefore they had to put a new inlet in. So knock on wood, hopefully it'll go pretty straightforward. The other alternative of like getting one made that's already set up was like 3 weeks out, which we can't have that happen. So Long story short, I believe we have a solution, but it certainly is kind of slowing things down a little bit in terms of getting the electrical done there. Because what happens next would be that the cabinet goes in and then the inspector from the city inspects it. And then Excel connects to it and then they finally have power. So there's this like succession of steps. But the concrete work, they poured curb there already today. So there's a lot of stuff they still can do. And I imagine they'll get most of the concrete work done this week on both those locations. And then once that happens, then we switch our last switch, right? Which is Court Street on the east side and Terhune. Both of those will be done at the same time too, but Jefferson will be open and South Street would be open then. So working on that. And so we may end up having South Street concrete all get poured and then have the signal actually operational later than we thought, but still within the project. And then painting. I cannot wait for painting. I am anxiously awaiting painting because it's going to make so much difference with just everything. Like we're still like every time I stop at Court Street so someone can turn left in my mind, I'm like, I can't, they don't need to do it. I mean, they don't know that, but like it's not painted that way, but soon they'll have their own lane, for example. And then Jefferson won't look like you can turn left because there won't be any left-hand turn lane there. And then the painting for the angled parking, all that stuff will be done. And I think that'll make a big difference on the one-way streets and add parking.
I
Yeah.
was curious about something.
Mhm.
The stormwater thing from the hospital, is that something that we should have known about or should have been in our drawings or?
No, so not us. And it's a bit of a tricky situation because technically we don't locate private laterals of any kind, like water side too, right? So if someone has their water service, we locate up to the curb stop, but we don't locate anything behind their connection. Same with the sanitary. Now, it kind of was a compounding issue because the other thing is on the GIS, it showed a connection from the back of the inlet, kitty corner across the radius to the other inlet. And that actually wasn't the connection. So when they looked at it, they thought it was going a different direction. They should have looked a little more carefully, but it was kind of like a miss on our side that made the whole make sense. But then a private locate is up to the responsibility of the private property. And when I talked to the hospital, they didn't like it happened. Gosh, do you remember when they took that building down on the corner? There must have been like 15 years ago. So the current staff
More
wasn't
than that.
aware.
More than that.
Well, I was here when it was there or it just moved. But in any case, it's about that time frame. And the staff wasn't aware because they moved that building. Dave Bean took it out to, yeah. In any case.
I was here
when
too when
that
they did
happened?
that.
You mean the building before the eye clinic?
Well, so the eye clinic was there and then they built the parking lot. yeah, and it was
that's what
in
you
that
meant, That
time.
building, oh.
Yeah,
I
it
was
was in
thinking you
that
meant the building before.
Oh, sure. No, not that. Yeah. So it was in that time when they built that it got put in. I feel like I vaguely remember someone saying something to me about them wanting to put it there. So in theory, the hospital should be locating it, but like the hospital wouldn't get a locate, right? And so it's just it's kind of a
Just
bad
curious.
situation for everybody, and their staff wasn't aware it was even there. Like when they showed me the pipe, I was like, "That's not ours," and I had a good idea of what was going on, but they were surprised,
Sure,
right? And I'm like,
sure.
"Well, your parking lot has stormwater like catch basins, which means it has to go somewhere, right?" And anyway,
Okay.
long story short, it was kind of a bad situation for
I
everybody.
would think it was more in the boulevard area. You're talking about in the. park.
No, it is in the Boulevard
Oh.
area because that's where we're putting the
Oh,
cabinet,
okay. All right.
which is what causes
So
it's
confusing.
always
Who has
confusing
control
'cause-
over the boulevard. you know?
right. That's exactly it. When you put something in the boulevard, people always think it's their property and it's not,
Yeah.
right? And
Okay.
it's still street right of way. So if we would run into, say, like we have utilities all over the place in our boulevards, like gas, electric, fiber are always in the way, right? But they locate it and they have to move it if it's in our way. And so this is kind of one of those scenarios where it's
Okay.
an awkward scenario because technically the property owner doesn't have the capacity to do it on their own, right? Like normally Excel would have their guy come and move it or whatever. So
Okay.
yeah,
Um,
I guess the only last thing I have on that is that all of the painting that is on Main Street, the painting stalls, is all still going to be done by the city staff. So tomorrow, Rick and Wade and I are sitting down and we're going to re-figure out how all that parking is going to be on Main Street, because there's a lot more space now. We want to make sure there's things like loading zones that are addressed for like the supplies and things like that, delivery trucks. We also know that we're like is right for the parking lot where Dr. Core's parking lot is. There, like Jefferson, it got closed. That driveway is closed. So now there's all this parking that was never there before. No one would know because the signage doesn't tell them that right now, but there's going to be a lot more parking that we can have in certain spots. So, and on Main. So, but we need to reconfigure that. So that's where we're just going to start from scratch, figure out the layout. Hopefully we can use some of the lines that are already there just because it's easier to paint over. But we'll see. So I guess to be continued, but if someone ever comes to you and talks about parking, like there's a significant improvement in parking. Like we already thought we were, I believe it was +7, but we're actually going to be significantly more than that.
Great. Okay, sewer project?
Sewer
2024
project.
update?
Sewer project is still rolling, although they haven't been working the last couple days, which is good because we're not really ready for them to move to the next step. Which hopefully is going to be resolved right away because we've been talking to the property owner for the easement that we've been looking at. They've basically done all the lateral work. And so now they're going to need to do restoration. So that I would imagine once the weather gets a little better, they'll be in there because they need to clean things up, put grass down, and then we're going to start the real next big last leg of it, which is going down Sands Road, crossing Main Street, and working along the fairgrounds sidewalk area essentially is what it is. So we've been going back and forth about how the crossing is going to happen. They wanted to bore it, but there's a lot in Main Street, including one of our larger one of our larger water mains they have to cross, and they're within inches of it. So yeah, right. You can imagine Greg's alarm to he gets it, but he's like, oh. So what they've decided to do, which I think is like a good happy medium, because the bad thing about not boring is that now we have to open cut, which means we have to stop traffic wherever we're digging. So what the current plan is they're going to bore under 2 panels or 2 sections, which would give us enough for two-way traffic to keep open. And then they would work on the fairground side and cut that open so that they can cross the water main seeing it. And so we're going to have a detour there. I mean, not a detour. We're going to have a merge over. The lanes are going to move over. It's never going to be closed, but it's still going to be congested because people are just not going to be able to freely flow like they do. So I guess that's something to be prepared for. We're not ready there yet, but that's coming.
Not
And
during
then-
Fair Week.
Pardon?
Not during Fair Week.
No. We're going to be out of the way of because we are actually taking some of the fair fence down to do the work, and we'll be working along the fair sidewalk and their fair property because the lift station that we're realigning everything so that we can eliminate, that's actually in the fairgrounds property. So we are going to work on meeting with the fairgrounds. So we've already met with the fair board because we have easements and things like that, but we're going to sit down with the contractor and the inspector and the fair board members and just walk through exactly what we're doing, because I think everybody being on the same page is particularly helpful. I keep thinking about the people that I see walking their dogs there, because I almost feel like we should put a sign up somewhere, about the fence not being intact, because the last thing we need is somebody letting Fido to run in a fenced area and then not know that Main Street of all places is an exit. Like, I don't know how to control that really, but it's been one of those things in the back of my mind that let's just keep ahead of that one. I think that's really it about the sewer project. I guess we're about halfway for funding wise, and we've gotten all the money so far. So
Oh, good.
File the one that just got approved today, first thing tomorrow morning.
yeah,
So we'll get that probably yet tomorrow afternoon.
which has been a nightmare. I mean, just the idea of like
Will it
it's
come-
federal funding. We want to make sure we're getting reimbursed. So I feel a lot better that we're getting reimbursed. So I feel a lot better that we're at least halfway. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, I want all of it, but at least we're not like building and then have all of that money on as a liability.
Okay, update on Center Avenue project.
Okay, I better get moving. I forgot that one was on here, and here I am yattering away. Sorry, everyone. Okay, I want to share my screen one more time, Nate. Okay, so if you remember, we had a variety of conversations about Center Avenue. It was a strong contender for the appropriations funding. We were expecting $1.5 million from that. It got put on the appropriations bill, and then the bill got passed, but no funding for appropriations was approved. So not just for Oakwood's, like everybody's. So this came forward from Van Orden's office, and Van Orden's office offered to resubmit for 2026 with like, basically we wouldn't really have to do much work. And we seriously contemplated that for quite some time, but then realized that we were actually potentially losing out with money in hand by waiting to see if we would even make it in this appropriations for next year that may or may not actually happen again, right? So we have right now, so this is our funding structure at the moment. It zoomed in enough that it's no control. There we go. So this is our DOT money. That DOT money, we're good for a couple more years, no problems there. But then we also were awarded the Safe Drinking Water loan of 1.218 and the Clean Water Fund loan and principal forgiveness, which is basically their way of saying a grant. So 588,000 for loan and 392,000 for principal forgiveness. We are able to apply again for next year, but what I realized was that our mean household income is now over 80% of the state average when it comes to 2026 numbers, what they use. So it actually knocks us into an entirely different category for what we're allowed to receive. So one, we would have to get lucky enough to get principal forgiveness again. And we also would only be able to get 20%, I think it was. So we were able to get 40 this year, but we would actually not qualify for 40%. Even if we were selected, we would lose half of that principal forgiveness for sure. That's like a ceiling they put on. And the other thing is we get a 1.32% interest rate because we're again in that less than 80%. But in this next 2026, again, that same reason, we would be in, what was it, 2.3?
2.32.
So it just wasn't, we already have this in hand and we were going to be potentially losing, we could potentially lose the loan money. We could potentially lose, we would know we would lose the principal forgiveness, at least half of it. And it was just like, no, we need to move forward if we can. So we are in the process of finishing the design for this project so that we can bid it in order to meet the requirements of the 2026 Clean Water and Safe Drinking Water Program, which we need a signed contract by the end of May. So we already had the water and sewer designed. We already had the contract approved. We had them on hold because anything we did before the appropriations was approved would put us into not being able to qualify that expense. And so basically what's left is the surface design, like the road width and the sidewalks and that kind of thing. So we've given Beerbecker the green light to do it. Even though the capital improvement plan is not finalized, the draft version shows this 466,000 coming from TID 6. What really hits, so if we would have got the appropriations funding, that number would probably have been more or less zero, depending on how we decided to break up the money. With the sewer, we would benefit a little bit. We would have had a little bit lower loan, but we wouldn't have been able to both have the DNR money and the appropriations money. We just had too much share from outside of the city. There's always a match. And what really gets hit though is the water. I mean, the water ends up basically paying $500,000 more than they would. It is what it is, but it is something that it certainly hits the water utility the hardest. We've been working through numbers and we're still in finalizing and talking to getting Sean's approval and knowing what numbers we're looking at. So for example, the DNR changed their funding a little bit about how we can allocate road costs. So everybody's kind of working on figuring it all out, and we would certainly not go to bids at not thinking it would work out. But I just wanted to update you about last time we talked about this, it was, oh, we're hoping to get this money, and now we have to make a decision or about which way we're going. And talking to folks involved, Nate, the mayor, did we talk about this? I think we did a little bit, right? It just made no sense to give away money that we already guaranteed to have. And it still worked with the general fund allocation. So anyway, more to come, but this is where we're at with this currently.
So you don't need anything from us.
I don't need anything, but I just want you guys to know what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
8 minutes to go. Let's see. Street department update.
Let's see. I think most of my stuff is covered, but I just wanted to make sure I gave, where's Wade's updates? Okay, they've been working on compost, patching, brushing compost, plow damage, fixing plow damage, unplugging storm sewers, getting ready for painting, and for the season, cutting trees. And also getting the trees that we're going to be planting. They've been working on ordering that. That's a quick version. If you want any more detail, let me know.
Okay. Go on to, you street, you go down to your utility, right?
Yeah, I'll be
Utility update.
really quick. Sarah's starting her 3rd week. It's been great. I think the office is happy to have her back as well. I'm taking care of some things that have been on my plate for a long time, and I can finally see the light in the surface. Next time, I hope to be above water. So I'm excited. That's all I got.
Great.
Awesome.
Glad it's working.
Yeah, I'm happy for Cheryl. She doesn't like not getting things done. I know it was bothering her. So the guys are working on jetting. They're about 25% done. They've been doing a ton of locates, which happens when it's construction season. We did treatment on well 6 that's finished, and we're working on well 5. They did the sampling today. We have flushing coming up and tower cleaning in the next few weeks. So that's all I got, really.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Sarah or Cheryl? Yeah. Nice job, everybody, as usual. Okay. Second period for public comment. No one is here. Anyone online want to make a comment? Okay. Adjournment.
This Todd will make a motion to adjourn. See?
This is Crystal, I'll second.
Motion by Todd, second by Crystal to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.